Hello, welcome to another gardening Q&A live on White Davy Gardening and Worm Farm. So today we're going to be discussing spider mites and fungus gnats. Seem to be making a lot of noise. Okay, so spider mites and fungus gnats. In our garden, spider mites have been a lot of problem for a lot of gardeners, and especially when starting seedlings indoors, or if we grow indoor plants, then sometimes we can have a lot of problems with fungus gnats, and sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge trying to get rid of them. And so today we're going to be discussing more about them, because the more you know about them, then the better able you will be to try and control their population. So, can you take a guess as to how many species of spider mites there are? How much do you think there is? There is actually over 1,200 species of spider mites. Now, on which part of the plants can spider mites be found? Spider mites love to live on the underside of your leaves, because that is where they feed, that is where they lay their eggs, and they like to stay on the underside of the plant because they are hidden from most predators, and it is more difficult to reach to them when you are using pesticides. So for that reason, they like to stay on the underside of your plants. Now, how many species of plants do spider mites feed on? Spider mites feed on several hundred species of plants. Do you know why spider mites are called spiders? They're named spiders because of the web that they make on your plants. So it's not that they are spiders, but because they make a webbing similar to that of a spider. So because of that, they are called spider mites. Oh, hi, Mom. So what is the purpose of, oh, hi, Han White. Yeah, so what is the purpose of the spider mite web? Do you know? The spider mite web is not used to catch food, as in the case with regular web made by spiders, but it is there to offer protection to the spiders and their colony, because spider mites live in colony, and only when there is a large population you would see the webbing. So how large or small do you think spider mites grow? Anybody want to take a guess? Spider mites grow less than 1 millimeter in length. So they are pretty tiny, Some of them are so small that it is difficult to see them with your naked eye unless they have reached their mature state. And their eggs sometimes can be difficult to spot unless it is in large quantity. Now, spider mites comes in various colors, but for the most part, they tend to be red, brownish, or orange in color. And what condition do you think spider mites thrive best in? Spider mites love warm condition. So when the temperature is about 27 degrees Fahrenheit, then spider mite eggs are most likely to hatch. And when it is around this temperature, they can hatch within just 3 days. And then spider mites can become sexually mature within just 5 days. So they don't really take long to hatch or to reach their maturity state. So, how many eggs do you think one female spider mite can lay in a day? One female spider mite can lay up to 20 eggs in just one day. And then these spider mites live for 2 to 4 weeks long. So you can imagine if one spider mite is laying 20 eggs per day and their eggs are hatching within 3 days and they live for 2 to 4 weeks. That is why the population is so hard to control because they are constantly reproducing. So, and a lot of the pesticides that we use, some of them are able to kill the eggs, some of them are not. And as I mentioned before, because the spider mites tend to stay on the underside of the leaves, so even if you try to reach the underside of the leaves to spray them, it is still a bit difficult to reach to all the eggs. So for that reason, they are difficult to control. And so the best method of controlling them is to do whatever you can to prevent them from being there in the first place. Now, if you're using pesticides for spider mites, and if you keep using the same pesticide over and over again, chances are that the spider mites are going to become resistant to the pesticide. And so it is a good idea to rotate whatever it is that you are using to control spider mites. I'm not so sure what attracts them, but I know they like things like melon, tomatoes. They like trees, some trees. They like most of the vegetables that grow in your garden. They actually like to feed on. Yeah, so pretty much most of the vegetables, as I was saying, in your garden, the spider mites will feed on. So even your eggplant, ornamental flowers, and household plants tend to have or attract these spider mites. Strawberries too attract them, and beans. So when you have these type of plants, be on the lookout for them. And when you see them, it is good to take action quickly because you don't want their population to get out of hand. Now, like like aphids, spider mites can control whether they produce male or female offsprings. They look almost similar to aphids. They're very tiny, and I don't know if you were here before when I was saying that they tend to be brownish in color, orange or red. They have many different colors because there are over 1,200 species of them. So they come in many different colors, but the most popular ones tend to be red, brown, or orangish in color. And some of them are two spotted, similar to that to aphids. They have 8 legs as well, and they're very small. They just grow to less than 1 millimeter in length. A lot of time we confuse them with aphids because their similarity between them is, yeah, they're similar in appearance, but there are some differences. I'm not sure what the exact difference is, but it is the damage that they leave behind that is better able to help you identify whether they are spider mites or aphids. We're going to be discussing that a little bit more later on. So, as I was saying before, spider mites can control whether the eggs hatch as female or as males, and they rather have more females than males. And so, even if the spider mites mate, the females are able to control whether or not the eggs become male. And fertilized eggs will produce females. The eggs that are not fertilized will produce male aphids. Not aphids, but spider mites. Okay, so you said you've never seen them. Okay, well, that's good. If you haven't seen them, it means that they're not in your garden, so that is excellent. Because eggs can hatch in just 3 days with the right temperature, which is around 27 degrees Celsius, as I said before, it is a good idea to treat your plants every 2 to 3 days. And if you have an infestation, then yes, it's best to treat your plants every 2 to 3 days. And one way that you can treat your plants is by beating them with water off the plant so that they will fall off so they can do less damage to your plant. This won't kill them, but at least it will help to prevent them from damaging the plant. So we're going to be discussing a little further on what treatments there are. See, yes, and I pray it stays that way. Yes, it would be great if it would stay that way. Now, what are some organic ways to treat spider mites? Neem oil. Make a solution with neem oil and water. You can use a few drops of soap if you so desire. Diatomaceous earth. Interplanting with pest repelling herbs and flowers can work effectively in controlling them. So a lot of herbs, most herbs are actually very good at repelling pests. But the thing with them is that some herbs will attract some pests and repel others. So you have to know what type of what type of plants is going to be able to repel spider mites. Now, are there spider mites that are good for your garden? Surprisingly, yes, there are spider mites that are good for your garden because there are some varieties of or some species of spider mites that are actually predators. They feed on other species of spider mites, which is good. So they eat both the adults spider mites and the eggs of the spider mites. One of these predatory spider mites can actually eat 5 adult spider mites in a day or 20 of their eggs in a day. Are spider mites classified as insects? Spider mites are not classified as insects. They are classified in the arachnid or spider family. Now, what type of plants? Okay, so I mentioned these already, the type of plants that spider mites like to feed on, but these are just a few of the plants that they actually like to feed on. So we said strawberries, beans, tomatoes, melons, eggplants, trees, ornamental flowers, and household plants. But there are many other plants that spider mites actually love to feed on. So you can research based on the type of plants that you will be growing, what type of insects are going to be feeding or are going to be attracted to them. Now, how can you identify spider mites? There are three main signs that you can look for in order to identify whether you're having a spider mite infestation. So, like I said before, aphids and spider mites, they have a lot of similarity in their size. As I mentioned, some of them, aphids and spider mites, might be two spotted. They have similar colors. So, three of the things that you can look for, the three of the most common signs of spider mite infestation is that you will see tiny white or yellow spots on the top of your leaves, because as they feed and suck the sap from the leaves, then they will leave spots wherever it is that they feed. You will also see a very thin, silky white web that they make to protect their colony. And if the infestation is heavy, then you will see bronze or yellow color on the leaves of your plants, and this may occur on many of the leaves of your plants. So these are the three main things that you can use to identify spider mites. Of course, you'll be able to see the mites in most cases, especially if there are quite a few of them, and sometimes you're able to see their eggs with difficulty unless they have a large population of eggs. So these are things that you can use to identify spider mites. Now, have you ever had to deal with spider mites in your garden? I know on White says she hasn't. I've had spider mites once, which was last year. They were very difficult to control. So, with that in mind, if you have had spider mites in your garden before, have you ever noticed them coming back again in that same location the following year? I've only experienced them last year, so I don't know if they're going to be coming back in that same location or if they're going to be coming back at all. But insects, these pests, these tiny pests, tend to like to come back in location where they find food. So I'll be on the lookout for them this year. I've already ordered my bottle of neem oil that I intend to use to treat them. And as I mentioned before, you need to rotate whatever it is that you are using to treat these spider mites, because they can become resistant to it, and that is something that you don't want to happen. So I ordered diatomaceous earth and I ordered some neem oil, and then in addition to that, I'll be making my own pesticide. So hopefully, if they come back, I'll be prepared for them. I'm also going to be interplanting crops that are likely to repel them. So these are the steps that I've taken to control their population this year. Okay, now let's talk about fungus gnats. I think these are actually very annoying creatures to have in your house, especially since as they don't just stay around the plants, they tend to be those that can fly tend to be very annoying. They fly in your face, in your ears, in your eyes, and just seeing them around your plants can be frustrating because You don't see their eggs, you don't see the larva, you just see the fungus gnat. Oh, hi, Melanie. Right, so for the fungus gnat, what do they feed on? Do you know? Take a guess. I'll give you a hint. Part of their name suggests what they feed on. Anybody willing to take a guess? Yes, they feed on fungus. That is how they got the name fungus gnat. Now, what size do fungus gnats grow to? Fungus gnats comes in various sizes. So they can be anything from 2 milliliter in length to 8 milliliter, which is about a third of an uh, yeah, around a third of an inch. So they come in different sizes. Some of them are actually pollinators, but not very many. Now, what type of disease? Yes, you're right and white. They do feed on fungus. So, what type of disease do you think fungus gnat carry? There are two main types of diseases that they carry on their legs. So, they will carry the mushroom spores, and the worst one is pythium. And the pythium that they carry on their legs is actually dangerous because that is what causes damping off of your seedlings and will cause your seedlings to die. Can fungus not fly? Some of them can, and some of them can fly, but very, very small distances. And so, because of that, when you see them, they tend to move very quickly, but they tend not to fly. I can relate to that. They're everywhere. Yes, they're annoying little creatures indeed. Hi, Garden State. Right, so these fungus gnats, they can be very annoying. So most of them, as I said before, cannot fly. Now, did you know that fungus gnats, some of them are actually hardy to cold weather? I was very surprised when I learned that some of them are hardy to cold weather because when I see them in my worm bins or I see them in my plants, sometimes I will just put the bin outside in the cold with the hope that they will crawl out and freeze. But I was very disappointed to learn that some of them are actually pretty hardy. So they can either avoid or they can tolerate freezing. And this is because they possess antifreeze proteins in their bodies. So it will either help them to avoid freezing or to tolerate freezing. Their whole body does not freeze, so they can protect their tails, the tail end, and their heads, but their abdomen will freeze, which is good for them, but not good for us because it means that they can survive the winter. Some species are able to both tolerate and to prevent or avoid freezing. Now, what conditions do you think fungus gnats enjoy? If you have had fungus gnats, you may have noticed that sometimes you will have them, sometimes you won't. So, have you ever noticed what conditions exist when you actually see them around? Moisture. Yes, Garden State and Melanie says moisture. True. They, their presence usually indicates that there are problems such as overwatering and If the root of the plants have been immersed in water for too long and start to rot, well, that too will encourage fungus gnats to increase their population. They are also attracted to saturated topsoil. So these are some conditions that will attract fungus and increase their population. So how can you control fungus gnats? What methods have you used to control fungus gnats? I did a video on that a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, on one method that can be used to control them using cinnamon. Yes. So to control fungus gnats, I haven't tried anything yet. Okay, Melanie. Something new I'm going to try this year is nematode. Yes, that is definitely one method of controlling them. Nematodes do you ever, how do you get your nematodes? Do you purchase them or do you culture them on your own? Right, so some ways that you can control fungus gnats in your soil is by allowing the layer of your soil to dry out. And if you do that, then that will reduce the population of the fungus gnats in your soil. You can place a layer of indoor mulch or sand on the surface of your soil around the plants, and that too will help. Okay, so Garden State says yes, she purchased the nematodes. Okay. When you're purchasing nematode garden State, um, do you know what type of nematode you're getting, whether it is fungal or bacterial, or if it is the worm type? Do you know if it is do they usually tell like if it is the beneficial one or if it is the predatorial type? Perlite works too. Okay. Okay, so beneficial. Okay. Some fungus gnats, some type of mites feeds on the larvae of fungus gnats. BT also helps to control fungus gnat. It will actually kill even their larvae. You can also use things like insecticide soap. You can use diatomaceous earth, nematodes, as Garden State said. You can use powdered cinnamon, or you can use fly traps to control these fungus gnats. Now, fungus gnats are attracted to things that are yellow. So if you're getting fly traps, then getting a yellow one would work very well in attracting them. Also, you can use hydrogen peroxide. I remember you were asking about that last week, Melanie. So yes, you can actually use hydrogen peroxide to kill fungus gnats. You want to get the 3 to 6% hydrogen peroxide, but you're going to mix it a bit strong to control the fungus gnats. So you're going to be using 1 part hydrogen peroxide to 4 parts of water, and that solution should be able to kill the fungus gnats and their larvae. Of course, you have to keep repeating these processes because they their cycle is very short and they reproduce very fast. So you want to repeat the cycle as much as possible to keep them under control. Okay, so that is all the information that I have on fungus gnats and spider mites. So If there's anything that you would like to talk about, how is your gardening coming along? Have you started sowing seeds indoors yet? And are you able to sow cold weather crops outdoors just yet? It's quite nice outside in my region. We're having a fake spring at the moment, so I'm enjoying it. The snow is melting pretty fast. That 2 weeks ago we had about 2 feet of snow outside, and now we have about a foot of snow in some regions. Some places where the sun is not shining, I have it a little bit higher, but we're having a fake spring. So, but the bad thing about it is that I'm concerned that my garlic and my what's that flower is called, and my tulips are going to start sprouting because they're going to think that it is spring, and then it's going to get cold. So now I'm going to have to find some means of covering those plants if the snow melts off to the point where they starts to grow, because I don't want them to die. It is the first year that I'm actually growing tulips. So I really don't want anything to happen to them because I'm excited to see how well they're going to perform. I still have some of the bulbs that I haven't planted yet, so I took them out. I had them stuck in a corner in my closet, so I took them out today and stuck them in the fridge. I'm going to allow them to stay there for about 6 weeks. But when I took them up, I was surprised to see that some of them actually start growing. When I bought them, they weren't in anything more than just a plastic bag with holes in it. There wasn't any sawdust or anything like that. So I was surprised to see that they actually started growing. So I'm going to be planting them hopefully in the front of my yard. But I have trees, big trees, two big trees in the front of my yard. So I don't know if maybe they will do well or not do well because they're not going to be getting full sun. But we'll see what happens with that. Let's see. Melanie says, all my strawberry seedlings died. Oh my goodness, I'm really sorry to hear that. So, do you have more seeds? Uh, yeah, if you have more seeds, then that would be good. And if not, maybe you should just purchase the seedlings. I don't know what time you have to start with your strawberry seeds in order for it to actually produce fruits, because I know they said sometimes you don't really get fruits if you. Oh, hi, Princess. Yes, sometimes you don't get fruits from your strawberries if you start from seeds in the first year, or if you get fruits, you will only get a few. Sometimes you will get a lot, but in most cases, they don't really produce a lot of fruits in the first year. No, use the whole pack. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Do you know what caused them to die off? Did they germinate in the first place? Yeah, that is sad. Yeah, I can't get the strawberry seeds that I want. I want to get the ones that produce runners. I'm seeing just the ones that don't produce runners, and if they don't produce runners, then it makes no sense for me. So I'm still looking to see if I can get more of those that will produce runners for me. Yes. So what was I saying before? I like best to start I'm ass- from PGS. I am not sure what that is, Princess. Can you tell me what PGS is? So you said you like to start best from PGS for that reason. Yes, it can be tricky starting from seeds with the strawberries. Well, but they did, but they got leggy and fell over. Oh, yeah, you might have to hugs these seedlings. Oh, okay, okay, yeah. So you might have to start get a grow light for them then if they're going to be getting leggy and falling over. You know, while grow lights, you can use the blue grow lights. You can also use regular shop lights in the initial state of your plants. So I mentioned in one of my live that grow lights, if their plants is flowering or produces flowers and fruits, then you will need blue light because that is what control the fruiting aspect of your plants. So if you have plants that will eventually produce fruits, but they're not at that stage where they're ready to produce fruits, you can actually use regular shop lights to grow your plants. But when it is approaching that time when it is ready to produce fruits, and if you're unable to put it outdoors, then you will need to switch to blue grow lights. But for now, you can use just the regular shop lights, and that works pretty well. And when you're buying your shop lights, you want to look on it and make sure that it is saying 6500 Kelvin, because then it kind of mimic daylight. It won't be strong enough to grow fruiting plants when it's close to that time, but it will work well. I also, on the 5th of this month, we were able to start onions indoors because I'm starting from seeds. If you're starting from seeds, they usually recommend that you start at least 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost date or before you transplant them outdoors. So I was able to start some of my onions, but I didn't start all of them all at once because I want them to reach their maturity state in stages. Let's see. Using the light over my stove for now. Okay. Yeah. So are you gonna try again with seeds, or are you going to start with seedlings? So this year is the first year I'm actually gonna be trying strawberries with seeds, but I like to get the seedlings that produce runners because then I can just propagate it that way. The seeds can be a bit tricky. Let's see, have to go from work, have to watch the rest on replay. Okay, Garden State, you take care and have a lovely day. Okay, you're gonna start again with seeds, Melanie. Okay. So when you're doing seeds, does it matter to you whether they produce runners or not, or it doesn't matter? Oh yes. Are you guys familiar with Jerusalem peas? It likes to grow in cool weather. So in Jamaica, it tends to grow sometime around October, November, December, in that period, because that is the cooler time of year for us. So I was able to get some at an Asian store that opens recently near me. So I planted some of them today. I had them soaking in water. Let's see, not Melanie, Princess says, if they get leggy, I think you started too early. Oh, okay. That's good to know. So these are Jerusalem peas. It looks similar to red kidney beans, but this is what it looks like after soaking overnight. For this has been soaking, I think maybe close to 30 hours, so it's actually twice the size of what it is. But it is very tasty. It's a very tasty piece. So I was able to start some of these, but because they're so tiny, I end up soaking way too much. I overestimate how much I was soaking. So you can see how much I have in the cup here. I planted 36 of them today and I still have that much. So I soaked way too much. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing with these now because I don't have anywhere to grow them. Apologies, I keep typing plugs. That's what. Okay. Let's see. Oh, Melanie says runners would be great because um, it could multiply. Yes, it would be nice to get the runners. So for that reason, I'm going to be going after some of the seedlings because I can't get the seeds that don't produce runners. Yeah, so far I have my peppers, my hot peppers that I started a few months ago, my Scotch bonnet peppers, those I have growing. Um, I planted petunias for the first time a few days ago. They say they take 7 to 10 days to germinate. I think I sowed my seeds about 5 days ago and they already germinated. So I'm looking forward to growing some petunias. I'm going to be interplanting those with my vegetable garden. And what else do I have growing so far? So I have the petunias, I have the Scotch bonnet peppers, I planted red kidney beans, and I know I'm starting early with the red kidney beans, but I'm starting early and I'm going to keep them under the grow light permanently. Oh, hi, Helpy. It's been a while, eh? Yeah, so I'm starting the red kidney beans because depending on the variety, it can take 3 to 5 months to produce. And so I'm starting with the red kidney beans early, and I'm going to be keeping them underneath the grow lights permanently because I want the ones that I'm starting now to actually produce and reach maturity state in the next 3 months where I can actually harvest it and plant them again because I don't have a lot of them to plant. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to harvest by the end of June, and then I'll be able to plant those that I harvested. So we'll see how that goes. It will be interesting to see what happens. The good thing is that these beans can be grown anytime as long as it is warm enough. So even if I start them the end of June, which would be late, they should be able to produce by the end of September. Let's see. So there's strawberries that don't produce runners by cloning. I never heard of that. Yes, there are actually some strawberries that don't clone themselves. I don't know if maybe they have been genetically modified because I know that there are some farmers who will modify their crop so that it does not reproduce, so that you have to keep coming back to them for more supplies. So I don't know if maybe that's why some strawberries does not clone themselves, but yes, there are some that doesn't. Let's see. LP says, yes, too long. Seems everything has to be done. I haven't gotten to watch your video yet, but congrats on joining the single seed challenge. I'm excited to follow your journey. Okay, thank you, my dear. Let's see. That would be a horrible waste of money. You mean to buy those that don't clone themselves? Yes, and to be going back to suppliers to get more plants. I agree with you. It would actually be a total waste. Well, there are some who don't mind because if it is things like hybrid variety and stuff like that, then some people don't mind. But for me, I always want more strawberries. It's never enough. So the plant has to be producing a lot of runners for me to be happy. And then there are also two varieties of strawberries. So when you're purchasing your strawberries, this is something you need to consider. When I say two varieties, I'm talking about some that will produce just one crop for the entire season, and then there are those that will produce more than one crop. So you have the summer strawberries. I think that's what they're called. And then you have the one that is called everbearing, and these will produce two crops in the growing season. I bought four strawberries 5 years ago and have had over 100. Wow, you go, girl. That's nice. That's very nice. Just a few. I keep trying with my strawberries, but my strawberries never came back. They never come back. Well, the year before last, I planted and they didn't produce a lot. I had them in a tiered system. They did not come back over the winter, so I don't know if maybe it was too shallow for them or maybe it was just too cold for them, but they did not come back. And last year I had some, I had a lot, well, I don't know if I'd call it a lot, but a lot more than I usually have last year. So I'm hoping to see if they are going to come back this year. It would be very nice if they did, because I've got about three raised bed with them, and I want to be putting them in quite a few more raised beds. So we'll see how that turn out. But that's nice. 5 years ago, and you have over 100 plants. Cover the site next time. Okay, yes. I figured maybe that's why they didn't come back the two previous years. So this year I added compost to it, and then I covered it with mulch. So I will see if it will come back. I did not cut them back though. It is said that you should cut them back. So I don't know if it really matters whether or not you cut them back, but cutting them back encourage them to regrow more. So next year or this year after harvesting, I'm going to be cutting them back. Yes, too cold. Oh, okay. Oh, Melanie says that's the one she wants, the one where you can buy four and end up with over 100 plants in a few years. Yes. So what do you use to cover yours, Princess? Do you use straw or do you use leaves or do you use just regular mulch? What do you use to cover yours? Sometimes I've cut them back. Okay. So, question, Princess, when you cut them back and when you don't cut them back, do you see a difference in terms of how they come back? The ones that cut back, do they produce more foliage initially when they're coming back, or is it just about the same either way? I am yet to have a bountiful harvest. Excuse me. I'm yet to have a bountiful harvest of strawberries, so I'm hoping that this year will be the year. Yeah. And it's funny how mine doesn't come back. My sister-in-law next door, she grows strawberries and hers keep coming back. They have been coming back every year and she has a bountiful crop of strawberries. So I don't know, maybe she's been covering hers, but I'm only covering mine. I only covered mine last year for the first time, so I will see. In the previous years that I planted strawberries, I had problem with the strawberries rotting, not the plant, but the fruit. They will rot. So I don't know. I really don't know what caused them to rot. I was wondering if maybe because they were resting directly on the soil or what the story is with that. So do you know? Do you know what caused them to rot? They would rot even before they reach their maturity state. And they were pretty small too, so I don't know. So if you know the answer to that, let me know, please. So, Princess, do you grow any of your strawberries where they, like, for example, in a hanging basket or something where the strawberries are able to hang over the side of whatever you're growing them in? Let's see, Melanie says 6 weeks before the first frost occurs, which is what I did, and they started growing very early. So I mulch around them. I planted them deep because they said 4 to 6 inches deep, and then you mulch around them. So I mulch around them. We had a very thick blanket of snow because the first snowfall that we had, I think I had about 18 inches of snow covering mine. So that might provide some insulation for it, but I don't know what's going to happen with it because, as I mentioned before, we're having a fake spring at the moment. So a lot of the plants are going to be sprouting, and then when it gets back cold, a lot of them are going to be dying. So I'm going to see if I can help to prevent that from happening by covering them with some clear plastic containers and milk jugs. But I don't know what to expect when the thawing occurs. Let's see. The time I cut back and cover with blankets, they came back better. Okay, good. That's good. I grow them in wooden boxes. Okay, so they hanging over the side, so they're not necessarily resting on the soil. Yes, I'm growing mine in raised beds and pots, large pots. So I will see how they're going to do this year. Okay, so what do you guys have growing indoors so far? Is there a lot that you can actually start planting now? Sadly, for me, there isn't a lot that I can start planting even throughout March. There isn't a lot that I can start planting, but I learned that a lot of the things that I was actually planting after the last frost in my region, I could actually plant them a few weeks before the last frost occurred. So I was very surprised to learn that. So I'm very happy to learn that because sometimes the growing season run out on some of my plants. So now that I know that I can actually plant some of these things outdoors before the last frost, I'm actually excited. I'm looking forward to doing so and to see how they're going to perform. This year I'm getting an earlier start on starting things indoors. So we'll see how that work out as well. Last year I started my tomatoes very early, too early in fact, and so most of my plants end up dying because I didn't the grow lights that I had, they were too small, so they weren't able to provide enough light. So most of the tomatoes died. I ended up with a few, but then I learned how to propagate my tomatoes so I can get more. Let's see. Lillian says they are resting on pine needles. Okay. Hmm. Maybe. Okay, I have mulch in there now, so yeah. But the park next door to me has a lot of pine trees, so if I need them, I can just go collect some pines from over there. Yeah. Let's see. So LP says peppers, three kinds: turmeric, ginger, garlic, and some flowers, herbs, and green winter sown outside. Oh, and in hoop houses. Hoop house. Nice. You've got quite a lot going on there. Yeah, my ginger finally start to show some sign of progress. I think one of the plants, the leaf or the sprout hasn't opened up the leaf yet, but one is about 2 inches, the other one is about inch and a half, and I can see the little tiny one, the third one coming up, maybe about half inch. So I'm pretty excited. I'm gonna see what's gonna happen this year because last year creatures ate my plants, and the ones that survived that, they died in the early freeze that we had. So let's see. Melanie says, I have peppers, cucumbers, sweet potatoes, and ginger. Okay. Wow, you're able to start your cucumbers already. That's exciting. I won't be able to start my cucumbers until like way down in April. Most of the things that I can plant are start indoors. I can only start them a few weeks before or last frost. So yes, especially things like vine plants like your cucumbers and squash. I can only start them maybe 3 or 4 weeks prior to the last frost date. Let's see. And White says, I've got chilies and sweet peppers indoors on my windowsill. Nice. Waiting to get my grow light set up before I grow anything else. Yes, I'm cheating a little bit with that. I'm starting my seeds. I don't have the grow light set up in the garage yet, but I'm cheating. I'm starting the seeds because I'm thinking that maybe I should, especially for those heat loving plants, maybe I should start the seedlings indoors and let them germinate and grow a little bit before I actually put them out in the garage because although I attached the heat vent to my greenhouse in the garage, it is still not as warm as I think things like peppers and tomatoes would like it to be. I put a blanket over it, but I don't still don't think it is warm enough, and I don't really want to turn up the heat because that can be expensive. So yes, I'm cheating and keep starting the seeds before I actually set up the grow lights outdoors. Hopefully, I'll have everything set up before it's time to move them to the greenhouse. Let's see. I started tomatoes last week, just one of 6 varieties. I've overwintered peppers. Okay, let's see. Mel, your garlic will come back in spring. Okay, yes, I don't have any experience with planting garlic prior to winter. This is the first time I'm actually doing it. So it's good to know that they will come back because if not, it would be a sad thing. Yes. Well, for that reason, because I wasn't sure how they were going to perform, so I didn't plant all the garlics that I wanted to plant. Oh, speaking of which, I have garlics growing indoors. I bought some garlic a few weeks ago and put them in the fridge. And then I decided, so yes, so I put them in the fridge because I intend to allow them to stay there for a few weeks before I planted them. But then, as I was looking down in a tray in the fridge that I hardly use, I noticed that I see a bag with garlics growing. I forgot that months ago I actually put some garlic in a Ziploc bag and put them in the fridge to stratify them. So they actually started growing in there. So I took them out and transplanted them a few days ago, and they're doing quite well. They're growing very fast. I'm actually surprised at how well they're doing. So I have those to transplant outside, but because there are so many of them, I have them planted too close to each other. But space is an issue at the moment, so they're going to have to stay there. I don't know if they're going to start producing while before the growing season actually starts properly. So I have those that started growing, and then I have two more Ziploc bags full of garlic. So I'm gonna be going out of my way and planting a lot of garlic this year. So let's see. Oh, Princess is asking on White if they are seedlings are overwintered. Okay. Mel says just experiment with a few seeds to see how the stove light will work. Okay, so how did it work? LP says that's so great about your ginger. A couple little nibs on mine look like they are thinking about sprouting. Yes, That would be great, eh? I need to get my hands on some turmeric, but it's not very easy to get turmeric. And then because of the pandemic, I don't really go to the supermarket as often as I used to. So when turmeric comes, they don't last long there. So it's kind of tricky to get some, but I really hope to get some to grow this year. Let's see. I cheated too and started seeds before I'm ready. Was supposed to start bunching onions this weekend, hopefully tomorrow. I was a day late with starting my onions, but I don't think a day is gonna hurt. Let's see. Melanie says, feeling a lot better now, princess. Okay. I have got garlic growing outside. Yeah, that's nice. Nice that you can have things growing outside at this time of year. You seem to have things growing right throughout the year, which is pretty good. I can't try that here at all. Yeah. Okay, it's not going good. Plants are getting leggy. Okay. Do you have them close enough to the light? Because they need to be at least 2 inches away from the light so that you can maximize the output of the light. So try to make sure that they are 2 inches or so away from the lights. You don't want them to be too close to the lights though, where the light will burn them. So you have to pay attention to the amount of heat that the light is producing. Okay, so Han White says her plants are seedlings for sweet peppers. Yes. So I'm excited because guess what? On the weekend, I'll be able to start my tomatoes and my peppers indoors. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. Uh, I don't know if I'm gonna get to start them on the weekend. I have some potting mix that I was using and sterilized. What was that? Last week or week before, and then I spread the soil out to dry. So I'm going to. That's the soil that I am depending on to start those peppers and tomatoes. So I'm hoping that it will dry in time for me to get to plant them next week because I'm going to be doing succession planting with them. So I want to plant one set this weekend, that is. And for those of you who saw my video that I did on taking cuttings from my sweet potatoes and putting it in water, I have an update for you, and that will be available either tomorrow or Wednesday, most likely Wednesday. So stay tuned for that. Yay, starting your peppers and tomato. Yes, I'm actually looking forward to it. I keep wondering why the time is taking so long. I put them on a big pot to get them closer, but it is still not enough. Okay. Yeah, sometimes you have to find multiple things to use to pot up those plants so that you can get them close to the light. I have been doing that quite a lot, potting up all sort of things to get the things close, as close to the light as possible. Sometimes it's a bit tricky because what I'm using to pot it up to get it to the light, sometimes it's not very stable. So any little mistake on your pot with your plants will turn over. And then you go cursing while you're the one who is guilty of doing that. But, well, that's just how it is. Let's see. Yeah, so I'm getting hungry. Oh, I'm so behind. I have one big sweet potato that sprouted. So I set it in starting mix. The leaves are growing. Now I need to watch some videos to know what to do next. Okay, yeah. So those sweet potatoes, the sweet potato competition that I was doing with my skin and the sweet potatoes in water. The sweet potatoes that is in water is actually producing roots. It actually started producing root like a few days after I stick it in the water. There is still no sign of leaves sprouting yet. I don't see anything happening with the skin just yet, so I'm still waiting to see what's going on and how long it's gonna take. Let's see. And why it says I won't plant my tomatoes just yet because it is too cold and I haven't got a grow light. Yeah. Well, this is the time of year that they recommend that we start our tomatoes here. But I'm a bit concerned though as to whether it's a good time to start it. So your tomatoes and your peppers. It's a good time to start it in terms of having them ready so that they can produce fruit that you can actually harvest in the summer. But in terms of grow lights, the size that they're going to be by the time you need to transplant them, because if I plant them next week or weekend, it means that I am going to have, let's see, 3 weeks in May, 4 weeks in April, that's 7 weeks, and 2 weeks now, so that's 9 weeks. I'm going to have 9 weeks to wait to transplant them outdoors. So, what size will they be in 9 weeks? That I do not know. And I don't really have a lot of growing space and I don't have a lot of grow lights. I don't intend to get any more grow lights. So, we will see. So, based on that, I'm not sure if it is a good idea to start them now, but I'm going to start just to be on the safe side. Let's see. Uh, Melanie says, I am going to cut some of my sweet potato plants too and put them in water. Wish me luck. Yes, all the best with that. Yes, it's not difficult, so you should have success. Yeah, you should have success. Um, I don't know how many plants, how many slips I'm going to be able to get from what I have so far. I don't really have a lot of plants, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to get a lot of slips because everything has to be, all the slips have to be ready by the end of May. Sorry, not the end of May, but by the end of March to early April, if I'm going to be able to produce sweet potatoes, because I don't know what variety I have, whether it is the 3 month variety or the 6 month variety. So I have to have everything by the end of March to the early part of April in order to be sure that I have 6 months in order to harvest sweet potatoes. Let's see. LP says some tomatoes grew from my worm castings, and I didn't really want these, but they are growing like a forest in front of the window. Several near 12 inches. Wow. Wow. They have been growing over a month, if not two. 12 inches in 2 months, eh? Do you have a south facing window? 12 inches in 2 months. If my tomatoes grow 12 inches, in I might be in trouble because when you start the seedlings, you start in small containers. Well, I'm not going to start in very small containers, but I mean the plants is going to spread out, which means that I'm going to have to move them away from each other to some extent. So if I do that, I'm going to be out of space. But I guess the next option I have if the plants get too big is to rotate them under the grow light. So if today I let one plant go under the grow light, maybe I can move that out tomorrow and put another one there and keep rotating so that they all get some amount of grow light. It won't be the best thing for them, but it will keep the plants going until I can transplant them. So we'll see what happens. I have only 3 potatoes. Each one produce about 5 slips. Okay, well that's good. If you have 5 slips, when your slips are between 18 to 24 inches long, you can actually cut them in half and plant the part or the portion that you cut off. You can either stick it in soil, as I said in my previous video, or you can stick it in water and let it grow root. Yeah, so you can do that to increase the amount of plants that you have. And that would mean, so if each plant produce about 5 slips, that means you have about 15 slips. And if you cut that in two, then you can end up with 36. So there you go. You're doing pretty well. It is south facing, yes. Okay, excellent. That's good. It's wild because they are really just all growing together, at least a dozen in a salad green container. Okay. I've just been watching and watering to see what they do. I should pot the bigger ones up. Okay, yes. Well, we will see. Every time I go to the garden center and buy tomato seeds, the Roma tomato, I'm not getting large Roma tomatoes, I'm getting the smaller varieties. So I went to the store last week and got myself some of those big Roma tomatoes. I don't know if they're indeterminate, which is the ones that I prefer because they don't produce their fruits all at once. But because I'm going to be doing succession planting with my tomatoes, so I guess it doesn't really matter much. Yeah, so I got the large ones. I took the seeds out, so I'm gonna see what's going to be happening. Are they going to produce fruits as big as the ones that I bought, or are they going to be smaller? It would be interesting to see what happens. Okay, so we have been here for over an hour. So pretty shortly, I'm going to be closing down. Go get me something to eat before I turn over. Why does it seem as if I'm always mentioning food when I'm on here? Oh well. Yes, I always do the Monday's live coincide with when I'm supposed to be having supper. So I guess that's why. I started some more sweet potatoes yesterday. Hope they will be ready for May. Yes, I hope so too. That would be great. I'm still waiting on results from those skin and those that I have in water. But the good thing is that I can always take cuttings from what I already have. My Japanese yam is not doing too bad. They're looking quite nice. I've been using my Epsom salt with banana peel and what's that? And comfrey to make fertilizer for it. So it's doing pretty well. Oh, another way that you can actually increase the amount of potato slips that you have. If you have your potato slips planted in soil and they get long, you don't necessarily have to cut them off to plant them. Just go say the slip is about 12 inches long. Sorry, not 12, but 24, 18 to 24 inches long. At the halfway mark, create an opening in the soil and just stick that middle portion of the slip into the soil and cover it up with the dirt, and it will produce root. Or you can get a piece of plastic or aluminum foil, put some soil in there, make sure it is moist and keep it moist and tie it on that portion of your sweet potato slip, and it will produce root. That way is the safest way to do it, because those two methods, with the soil tied to the plant or sticking one portion of the plant in the soil, because what it allows is the plant will continue feeding from the main root while it is producing roots at the other location that you have in the soil. So This will ensure that your plant will not die when you cut it to create more slips. Yes, so let's see. Princess says that would be nice. It definitely would be. Okay, so Melanie says having some hockey and saltfish for dinner. Can I come over? Oh Lord, yes, hockey and saltfish. What are you having it with? Dumpling and yam, banana, what? Okay, just trying to make you get some more hungry. Oh, you wicked woman. Ah, that's a great idea. Oh, okay, yes. Um, my supper is already made, so when I get hungry, I'll go grab it. Supper. I'm calling it supper. Am I turning Canadian? Nah. Okay, so I think I'm gonna be ending it here. It was nice talking with you guys. Let's see. Princess says that's safer. I use disposable fork as well to pin it in the soil. Okay, yes, that's a good idea. Because I know mine tend sometimes they tend to want to lift up out of the soil. So yes, that's a good idea using the fork to pin it. I like that idea. I'm gonna copy it. I'm a copycat today. Yeah, so guys, thank you all for being here. It was fun chatting with you. Um, on Friday, I said that I would be doing a demonstrative worm farm live. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that one because the ring light that I need to do that demonstration, I had to send it back to the supplier because it came with a lot of scratches on it. It didn't really look new, so I sent it back. I'll be getting another one on Friday, but I might not get it in time for the live because the live is at 12. So if I don't get it in time, I'm gonna have two different live material prepared. So if I don't get it in time, I won't be doing that demonstrative live until the following Friday. So that's it. Green banana cornmeal dumpling. Oh yes, I'm getting hungry. I hope you're not hearing my tummy. LP and Melanie, I have been searching your channel. No success. Okay. Oh, well, I'll let them answer that. Yes, I don't think they do videos. Joyce, Mom, thanks for sharing good information. Okay, you're welcome, Mom. Bye, Han. See you guys. See you all on Friday. And stay safe and keep growing. I'm out of here.